10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, everybody? It is Thursday night. It is 9 p.m. The kids are in bed. The wife is relaxing. It is time for Shooting the Shit Uncensored, and I am your host, the dad bod god himself, the bald, the beard, the fucking beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight, guys, I am hype. I am pumped. I have a Australian wrestling icon, legend, Ken Dazzler Dunlop on the show, and I am so excited to have Mr. Dunlop here with me this evening. But guys, before I bring out my guest of this evening, I just want to take a quick second, a quick moment, a quick pause for that cause to thank some of those amazing sponsors that help keep this show possible every single week, free for all of you. First up is healthvape.com. Ladies and gentlemen, healthvape.com is your healthy vaping alternative. All of their products are no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals, and they're vitamin infused. Guys, if you're one of those nasty cigarette smokers or those nasty vapors, you vapor people thing, you know, the ones that walk around with the big vapes, they make lots of noise, chuck clouds up. Guys, head them over to Health Vape for a healthier lifestyle. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Next, ladies and gentlemen, you need to check out that sleefs.com. That's SLEEFS.com. Sleefs. They are your one-stop shop for all your athletic wear and apparel. They've got armbands, compression pants, compression shorts, headbands, knee bands, boots. Guys, they've even got dirty boxes, and I keep saying it. They've sent me boxes of these boxes. And guys, I've thrown out all my other boxes because they are so damn comfortable. I'm an active guy. I work full time. I'm always podcasting. I'm running after my kids. I'm going to the gym. I'm an active guy. These boxes stay fresh. They stay dry all day long, and they've got some funky designs on the front to keep that special person in your life giggling at the end of the day when their belt buckle comes undone. But guys, check out those dirty boxes. Use that promo code MWAPOD for a 10% discount on your final purchase. Now, guys, MWA Podcast Network, we are bringing you some of the best wrestling media content there is. You have this show, Shooting the Shit Uncensored. You've got the NXT Roundup. You've got Killing the Business with former ECW original, the Kingpin, Angel Medina, and King Mega. You've got Knights of the Gimmick Table with the Dead Presidents, Boogaloo and Lowrider, and the new addition to that show, Cade Lothbrock. So, guys, check out these amazing shows we got going. Hit that subscribe button, hit that share, like, comment. If you're listening to us on any podcast platform, leave us a 5-star review, baby, because we definitely appreciate it and it helps out the network. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring out my guest of the evening. Without further ado, here he is, Ken Dazzler Dunlop. Welcome to Shooting the Shit.
Good evening, Piers. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very excited to have you on, Ken. You've just released your autobiography, and you sent me over a copy of it, and I've told you as a shoot that I haven't been able to put it down. Like, I've been nonstop reading it. It's one of those books I think that any wrestling fan, and not just any wrestling fan, but any like sports fan or old school sports fan, from that was around watching stuff from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and those early 2000s could appreciate this book because, this story really does tell the story of your life growing up, getting into the professional wrestling business. Your career and the career that you did have was absolutely amazing, top performer. But how did you come to be to want to put this autobiography together?
When I retired from wrestling, like a long time ago, I retired in 2000. And when I'd meet up with all the wrestling fans and friends like Ed Locke and a few other guys like that, we sit around shooting the breeze, having a few beers at the pub, and they mentioned certain people or certain things, and I always have a story about everything. And people kept saying to me, you should write a book, you should write a book. So it's been in my head for quite a long time, but working full time like yourself, you work hard. I was working 55 hours a week, and I just never had time to sort of sit down fully and do it. So I had to retire from work 4.5 years ago, mainly due to bad health. And I sat down and I thought, well, I've got nothing to do. I'm getting fit. Since I've retired, I've lost 25 kilos in weight. I've got fitter. My health improved out of sight. And I sat down and I thought I'd start writing the book. But it took me 2 years. It's pretty hard work. And with my memories not that great, with all the concussions I had over the years, that's why I've got a chapter on CTE in there. So I'd start writing, then I'd put it down, then I'd start writing again, then I'd think of more things, and I kept adding and subtracting. And the publishers, Shoreline Publishing Group, they've been fantastic. They wanted to put the book out in May. They wanted me to have it finished last February. And I just kept saying, look, I need more time. And they just were really relaxed and never pushed me. And yeah, it took me 2 years, then took 6 months to edit. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of it, but I'm still remembering things now that I wish I'd put in there. That's the trouble. But yeah, I'm very happy with it.
And is this the first time you've written a book?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So like, it's amazing, like that you had a publisher ready to go and was saying, yep, we've signed it. Like, how did that sort of come to be? Because I'm not too sure about how book publishing works, but I thought it'd be like, okay, you got to write the book and then you got to go and like pitch it to like, different providers and saying like, okay, your publishers, and say, okay, this is my book, this is a story, and try and get them to sign a deal there. Like, how did the connection with the publisher?
It's very hard. A lot of places won't even touch you unless you've got an agent, which I haven't got. So a lot of the big companies just wipe you straight away. It came down to about 4 different companies that sort of were interested. I just gave them the idea. I wrote out a little like 10, 20 page startup of it just to say what it was about. And that cut down to 2 basically who were interested. Excuse me. And because I'm not a known author, no one was up front with the money. I had to pay, obviously, money to do it, which I didn't mind doing. Sure. And because I knew no one was going to fork out money for an unknown person because I don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I was really pleased. They sort of stuck by me all the way, and they've promoted it really well as it came out. They designed the cover, actually. I had a different cover altogether. They designed the cover so it stands out like anything. And it's apparently going very well. I won't know till the end of February exactly how many copies we've sold so far, but they'll send me a report in February. But it's available everywhere now. In the States, it's in Walmart. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on some English sites. It's on some Canadian sites. It's in a friend of mine's over in Taiwan at the moment. He saw it on a Taiwanese book. He sent me the copy of it, and I thought, oh, wow. Oh,
that's awesome.
So it's getting around. Yeah, so it's good.
So, you retired in 2000, from professional wrestling, starting in 1977, when, professional wrestling back in the 70s, I can imagine was pretty much, kayfabe pretty well. Like you had to have sort of known someone to get in. When I was reading about how you got in, it was almost like it was not easy, sort of like the intro, but it was like you sort of was like, you met some interesting guys and some guys that were willing to sort of like teach you the business, which was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, going to Festival Hall as a kid from the age of 13, you get to meet a few of the local people, because we used to get there like 6:30 in the evening. So we wanted to see the guys turn up, so you get their autographs or get some photos. And I got to know Sam Rossi quite well and John Snyder. And just every week you'd say hello to them, they'd say hello, you'd meet their wife, their kids, that sort of stuff. And then when I turned 16, Sam Rossi just said, would you be interested in learning? And bang, yes, I'll be there. It was sensational.
There's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt in that. But were you watching, like, was there much of the international product available to you at that time? Because I can imagine, like, there wasn't really much of, like, it would have been WWF.
Yeah, it was then, but there was hardly anything on TV in those days. And of course, there was no internet, of course. So
yeah,
I didn't see much overseas stuff at all. And it wasn't until I think Wide World of Sport on Channel 9 used to show a match every now and then. That's the only time I ever see stuff. But when I got to know Ed Locke and Sue Shooter in Melbourne, because they had a lot of tapes from overseas. And so I'd go to their house and watch different tapes. Then because they had a converting machine at their house, they'd convert the tapes, and I started watching a lot of stuff then. And then I'd sort of try and copy it and learn it. And like Ric Flair was obviously my idol, and I'd watch his matches. I watched the match with him and Steamboat. I must have watched that match at least 30 times. And Wayne and I tried to do that match ourselves. We did a 45-minute match based on that, which was sensational. But that's how you got to learn. But in those days, there was nothing on the net. There was nothing, you just had to sort of put your ass down and work really hard. And the guys who taught me, there was Casey Miller, Sam Rossi, Jim DeMeros, Fred Berger, and John Snyder. All different guys, all different styles. And some, they were pretty tough. If you mucked up, especially Casey, if you mucked up, he'd give you a real hard boot up the arse, smack around the back of the head, and he'd scream at you. And, sometimes you're just petrified, So, it was different days.
How long did it take for them to smarten you up to what it was, to what the business really was?
It took quite a while. They didn't talk a lot about stuff because nearly all those guys were heels except Sam and Jimmy. And they sort of still kept kayfabe was still pretty much there. Even when I had my first match in August 1978, you can see in the dressing room how around us young guys, they sort of still separated. They didn't, like they were sitting there talking together, but if we'd walk around, they'd stop talking. And I thought, okay, it's just interesting. And to see them do all that sort of stuff, it was just totally different. Yeah, so it took a couple of years probably before I sort of really got the gist of everything, type of thing. So it was pretty hard in those days.
But how did, like, because having your first match, like, because you had it with another like rookie, right? So you guys
Rob
went
Magris,
So you were saying like you had your first match against Rob Magris, another rookie. You go in there, you guys aren't smartened up to the business. Are you just trying to kill each other at this stage in the ring? Like what did they tell you before you went out there? Do you remember?
No, we just did like, I think about 10 or 12 minutes, babyface match. It was pretty routine hold, counter holds, a couple of little high spots, flying head scissors, that sort of, a few flying drop kicks. It wasn't a great deal, but it was just enough to sort of get us interested and get the appetite. And I mean, the first night, just walking out to a crowd was just, I'll never forget it. It was just incredible. You're sort of trying to concentrate it. And we weren't on first either. We were on second, which was interesting. I thought they'd put the rookies on first, but they put another match on before us, so we watched that through the curtain. And then when we came on, it was sort of like, wow, I've got the music, and you sort of walk down and the applause, and you just think, oh shit, and you're so scared and so nervous. And the very first lock-up, we stuffed up. We both went for an arm drag and fell on our asses. And
what
we
was the
just
reaction?
got up. I mean, the crowd laughed, of course. And Tony Marino was the referee, very experienced referee and sensational person. Just said, start again. And boom, we just started and went into our routine, and bang, it was perfect.
So, like, you know, coming into that as well, like, you know, like, before the match, were they saying, right, you're going to go over, you're doing the favor? Like, did you understand what that meant? Like, when they finally, like, when you went out there, like,
yeah. I mean, I said when we were training, because we trained for a long time for it, and beforehand, it would have been about a month beforehand, they brought Jack Little down to the gym, and I mean, Jack Little was just an icon, an absolute fantastic man. And he watched us train. He watched us train with Fred, Sam, Jim. Then he watched us do our match. And they actually said to him, we can only push one of these guys. And it was up to Jack, basically, to choose who to push. Yeah. So after watching us train for like 2.5 hours, Jack just went, little Kenny. And I got the push. Yeah, I sort of pretty much went over my first 5 or 6 matches, and they were building me as the young, up-and-coming, like, superstar type of thing, you know. So I was really lucky to get that push, where Rob sort of, unfortunately, didn't get any push, and he only stayed in the business for about a year, then he left, so, which is sad, because he was quite a good worker.
Yeah. Why was it you think that Rob didn't get a push? Like, if he was a good worker, like, shouldn't he have got a push? Was there more politics involved to it?
No, he didn't have I'm not being horrible, didn't have a great personality. That's a big part of it. Like, I was sort of more out there and working the crowd, where he sort of was a bit more shy. And so, yeah, I think that's probably one of the main reasons.
Do you think he could have overcome that, though? Like, I feel like a lot of people, like guys and girls, would feel that way, like when they first break into business, like being a little bit sort of introverted. Yeah,
sure. He had everything. He had a bigger body than me. He had a more solid body. I think he was about 1 or 2 years older than me, but yeah, he's just, I don't know, he's just sort of just held back, and that's where I think sometimes, if he'd stuck with it, he probably would have got there, you know. But he must have just got pissed off or whatever, and just went away.
And that's the thing, pro wrestling, you know, to be successful in it, persistence is the main ingredient in that, you know, persistence and dedication. You know, that's the thing to stick with it, you know, and, you know, and
my life was strange at that time, because I was on such a high from the wrestling, because I was 16, 17 learning, and my first match. But I was also dealing with my sexuality at the time, which was bringing me down. Like, so I was on such a high from that side of it, from the wrestling side of it, but my personal life, I was really struggling to come to terms with, am I normal? Am I not normal? Am I weird? And there was no helplines in those days. There was no, you couldn't go and ask people for advice or help. I didn't know any other gay people. It was a real struggle. So, and I struggled off and on for quite a few years with depression, and it was hard when I actually finally went to see a psychologist. But I was on such a high from the wrestling, but I was on such a low, and I think in a way it helped balance it out, so it didn't really affect me that badly.
You had an out. You had like a, you know, something to take your mind off what was happening in your reality.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's crazy. And like, because like you would have been what, 17, 18 at the time, and going through this, just
16, 17, yeah.
16, 17.
And being around all these tough macho guys at the gym, like, you'd go to the gym on a Monday night, and there'd be condoms in the corner of the ring, where the guys would pick up girls, the ring rats at Festival Hall on Saturday night. They'd take them back to the gym, and they'd actually have sex in the ring, because some of them were pretty grubby blokes.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and you think, oh shit, you know. And once a month at the gym, they held a blue movie night, they called it in those days, a porno night. And because I was too young, which I'm glad I was too young, they wouldn't let me stay. But they'd bring in a couple of cases of beer, they'd get some pizzas from down the road, and they'd all sit and watch blue movies. And I don't know what happened. I don't want to know what happened.
You know what? I'm just going to say this. As a straight male, like, that is not, to me, sound like a desirable evening to sit around. Like, I don't call my friends and go, hey, man, let's get some beers and some pizza and watch porn. Like,
Yeah.
But the wrestling business is a completely different world altogether, right?
Oh, there's some weird guys. And in those days, too, in the dressing rooms, people would sit there and smoke and drink before the show and play cards and all that sort of stuff. It was quite common.
Yeah. But, you know, like, were you, like, going through what you were going through personally? Like, did you find it, like, were you, because like reading your book, it seemed like you had a very, you know, positive family upbringing, loving parents, supportive parents. Was it a fear to come out to them? Like, was that your one of your biggest fear? Like, how that would have, were you worried that would affect that relationship?
It was mainly with my dad. He was a typical Australian, hard-working. His parents were the same. Like, his father was a real hard task man. He was never one to give like the grandkids a hug, or we used to go and visit him once a month. It'll be a real tough handshake. G'day, mate. How you going? And yeah, he was I was always petrified of my grandfather, and Dad was sort of like never one to sort of hug or that sort of stuff. You know, he did later on, obviously, but at the time, I mean, he had to raise 5 kids, so he was working his ass off. He was working 3 jobs, sometimes 4 jobs to pay for all the kids' education and that sort of stuff. So he's a very hardworking man, and he used to drink a lot and he used to smoke a lot in those days. And I was really scared, like, to come out to him. And Mum was fine. Mum and I, we were as close as anything. And again, when I did finally come out and tell them, she knew. I never hid it from them. I just never told them about it. Like, when I first moved to Sydney, there was a gay bar called the Exchange Hotel, and I used to go down there probably 2 or 3 nights a week, and you'd see all these TV stars down there. You know, there was guys from the Sullivans and different shows, and I'd bring up Mum, say, oh, Mum, I was at this bar last night, and there was so-and-so here, and he's gay, and she'd go, oh, wow, yeah. And we'd have all these conversations, but I still couldn't actually say it to them. And it wasn't until, and again, it's in the book, which I wasn't going to put in the book at all, but I got that depressed at one stage there. I tried to commit suicide, which was a real tough time. I sort of went home on the Friday night from work, and I was supposed to work on the Saturday morning, but I didn't go, obviously. And I was just sitting there, and I was just depressed, and I was just started crying, and I took about a dozen sleeping tablets, drank 3 or 4 cans of beer, and I was living at Bondi Beach at the time. So I walked down to the beach, and I walked up to the far end where the rocks are, and I actually got to the edge of the rocks, and I was going to jump. And lucky enough, this jogger, and this is about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, this jogger just happened to come past, and I was crying, and he just grabbed my arm and said, are you okay? And I don't remember much of the conversation. There was a park bench nearby. He took me down there, sat down, and then I woke up. I was home in bed, and I thought it was Saturday morning, and it was Monday. Oh. So I went to the corner shop to get the newspaper, and I looked and I thought, fuck, can't be Monday. And I said to the guy, what day is it? He said, it's Monday. So I thought, oh, fuck, I missed work on Saturday. So I ended up ringing my boss and said, look, I can't come in. I said, I just said something happened bad on the weekend. I need to have a week off. And I rang up my best friend, Stephen, who's unfortunately just recently passed away. And he was good friends with a psychiatrist, and she went and saw me that day, and she was just sensational. And we had a really good chat for about 3 hours. And then I decided to fly down to see Mum and Dad and tell them. And that was just so hard. And I waited, I got there in the morning about 10 o'clock. It wasn't until after dinner that night. My younger brother had gone to bed, and there was Mum, Dad, and my grandmother actually in the room. And I said, I'm going to need to talk to you about something. And when I said it, my Nan just went, oh. And Mum went, oh, I've known for ages. Dad was sort of like pretty shocked. He just sort of looked at me, and he just sort of got up and left the room and went to bed. And I thought, oh, okay. So then Mum and I sat up for about 4 more hours for, talking about stuff. And the next morning, Dad he said good morning, obviously, but didn't talk to me. And I thought, oh, shit, okay. So then I thought, I better go home. So I said, look, I'm going to go home today. And he said, no, stay. And then he said, look, you're my son. I love you. Just don't talk about it. So I said, okay. And then the following year, they came up to Sydney for a holiday, and they met some of my gay friends, and they were fine. There was not a problem with it. And we sort of didn't talk about it with Dad till my mum got sick in the 92, 93 area, when she got really sick. And then Dad and I became really close after that. And then it was no problems at all. He'd sit there and hold my hand and tell me he loved me, and we'd hug every time we saw each other and all that sort of stuff. So we became really, really close right up until his death, only about 6 or 7 years ago. So we were very, very close.
That's beautiful. That's really like and I think a lot of people from those generations, and I've heard other stories similar to that, where it's like, and it's almost because they've never been around, like at that time, people that were homosexuals, gay, lesbian, they were more closeted because like how the world was at that time. You know what I mean? Like they probably may have known other people that were homosexuals, but like just didn't know. And like I think maybe when they're confronted with it, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm not mad about it, but like your dad obviously processing it. But I'm glad he finally was able to come around and fully accept it.
Yeah, and when Joey, my partner, Dad would go out, Dad would introduce him as his son-in-law, which was fantastic.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. I think that's obviously someone who really, that to me is a real man. And I think that to be able to sit there and be able to come from the background that your dad came from and go, you know what, because my dad was the ultimate hard ass, fuck that. Like, what, that's my son. He's an amazing human being. Sexuality means nothing. It's who he is as a human. And obviously, that's the story. That's what is the case here.
Yeah, and it's funny, he wasn't a wrestling fan either. Mum was a wrestling fan. But when Dad would come to Sydney, like he'd come up every year for a holiday, I'd always take him to the shows, of course. And as soon as we turned up at the shows, Bob Blassie and Ross Carew would take him to the bar. So they said, Dunlop, you're on your own. So I'd have to do the whole show on my own, commentate or do whatever I had to do. They'd take me old man, get him pissed and he had a ball. He loved it,
Yeah, because he had a gut full of beers all night, so, but as far as your career and starting to get into wrestling, and I want to touch on as well, because like when you came out to the other wrestlers, was that something that you were fearful of, like how these guys would accept it, or how would they accept you in a locker room? Was that ever in your mind, or was it just never
It
really
was
needed to be said.
it played a big part in my mind, but it wasn't really necessary to come out to them. Like I told John
Mm.
Schneider was the first one I told, and like we became again like soul brothers, John and I. I mean, he was a big man, 20s, 23, 24 stone, a big bald man. He was sensational, and he said, "Look, don't worry about it." Some of the others sort of never reacted. And I sort of didn't expect much. But when I moved to Sydney in 1980, that's when it sort of become different. And none of the guys sort of had known me. So I sort of pretty much came out straight away to all of them. And I mean, I didn't have to. They don't need to know my personal life.
100%.
But I just thought the ones I was sort of hanging around with the most, I told. And any young guy that I taught, I told them all beforehand, look, if there's a problem, go train somewhere else. That this is how I am. And yeah, there was never really an issue. There was a couple of the older guys didn't like me because of it. That didn't worry me. I still wrestled them. They respected me and I respected them. So that's the main thing. As long as you got their respect, they might not have liked me personally and I didn't like them personally. So simple.
I mean, as long as you can go in that ring, be a professional, take care of your opponent, and have a good match, what else really matters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be an issue. Like there shouldn't be like the guys in the States now, and they shouldn't have to come out. They should just be natural. And gay guys, like that's one thing I didn't want. I didn't want to be promoted as a gay wrestler. Like most of the guys who, again, you look at the Gorgeous George and all those sort of guys. All these guys are straight. They just did that for cheap heat. And in those days, they said they loved seeing the gay guys get beat up because that's how it was in those days. So I didn't want to be known as the gay wrestler. I wanted to be known as a wrestler who happened to be gay.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
I think like we see that now where it's like, you know, we're seeing gay wrestlers, you know, in the Australian scene and also in the international scene. You know what I mean? Like they're not walking around saying, "Hey, look at me, like I'm gay," but you can see that they're incorporating their style, their personality, who they are, them as human beings into their gimmicks. And you know what I mean? The freedom to do it and also be baby faces, to also be, you know, actual contenders and threats. Whereas like, you know, I think probably let's say the 90s and prior, you know, wrestlers which were a little bit flamboyant or a little bit, you know, feminized in some sort of way, or, you know, perceived to be homosexual, was always like a comedy thing or like that funny spot. Where now it's not. They can be put in serious situations where the sexuality means absolutely nothing. Their talent and skill, what's happening in front of you, is what is the importance, which is the catalyst of the match.
Yeah, and it's great to see there is quite a few open to gay wrestlers here in Australia. I've reached out to a couple and speak to a couple of them via Facebook, which is great. And yeah, so I'm always there for support if they ever need it, type of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing that you're offering that support to the younger talent, because that's one thing that I'd like to see more in the Australian scene, is seeing some of, you know, the veterans of the business coming and being around the shows and being able to sort of lending that support and stuff like that, and you know, giving that little bit of advice and stuff like, because I think that's beneficial. You look at, you know, over in the States, there's that sort of happening with veterans, and in the UK, I think Australia, I think that's probably the only thing that's really missing.
Yeah, and one thing today, the companies and promoters don't want to work together. They don't want to sort of help each other. They're all just all trying to bring each other down. Where in Australia, like when I first moved to Sydney at the time, there was Steve Ackman was the biggest promoter, then Roy Heffernan, then you had Larry O'Day, Ron Miller, and then there was like Johnny Chorm, George Zorbas doing little shows, but they all worked together because there was that many shows at the time. Like in Sydney, we could have 20 shows a month. So
Really?
Roy would ring Steve and say, look, because sometimes on a Friday night there'd be 2 shows. On a Sunday there could be 3 shows, and they'd all use the same guys. So they'd ring each other and say, like, who have you got? Where have you got them on the card? Because I want to use them on my show. So sometimes I'd do like the first match at one club and the main event at the second club. And there was one Sunday I did 4 shows in the one day.
Jeez.
So,
So like wrestling was that hot back then, like on an indie level.
Right. In the 80s, it was fantastic. As at every Friday night, there'd be at least 2 shows, and as at every Sunday, there'd be 2 or 3. The Sunday we did 4. I think we did Blacktown at 11 o'clock. There was another show at 1 o'clock, one at 3 o'clock, and one at 7 o'clock. And then there was one Sunday night, Rackman had 2 shows near each other. One was at 4 and one was at 6. And I think I was on the second or third match at the first one, but I was on the second match at the second club. So I had to get out of the ring, chuck my tracksuit on, jump in the car. Like, it was only a 20-minute drive, thank God.
Yeah.
And as I got to the second club, I walked into the auditorium, and the first match was still going, and they knew I was on next. So and Lofty was in that match, funny enough. As soon as he saw me walk in the door, boom, he went to the finish. So I sort of had to rush in the dressing room, get my tracksuit off, put my jacket back on, go in, my music started. I didn't even know who I was wrestling. So I had to get in the ring, and the referee had to just tell me who I was working with and what the finish was.
But those you guys could have obviously called in that match. So that's like going in there, just calling everything on the fly.
Yeah, we had to do 20 minutes. So, and I'm not sure. I don't think the guys today could do that, because in those days we always planned a fast start, 1 high spot each basically, and then the finish. Everything else was called in the ring. Where today, every second of a match, and they don't go 20 minutes, they don't go 30 or 40 minutes these days, they go 10 minutes. And every second of that 10 minutes is planned. So if you don't know who you're working with or what what's going on, a lot of them would struggle with that, I think.
Do you think that the reason why they've gone from, say, like a 20-minute match to a 10-minute match is because like people's attention span isn't there? Or do you think a good wrestling match will keep someone's attention span there?
No, if you've got a good match, you can keep them. You can keep them going the whole time.
Yeah. Well,
there was one night I can't remember the club, but it was a Steve Rackman show. There was always 3 singles and a tag. That's how it worked. It was always a 2.5-hour show with a 15-minute interval. That's how the shows were, because the clubs were guaranteed paid money, and that's what they had to do. And 2 guys hadn't turned up. So Rackman said to the first match guys, stretch it out to 35 minutes. And they went home after, I think it was about 10 or 12 minutes. One of them dislocated his thumb or something like that. And Rackman was absolutely fuming. Now, I was wrestling Andy Harpus, and I was a baby face then, and Andy was the heel. And as you know, Andy was a big guy.
Yeah.
And Rackman said, do an hour. And we went, what? He said, do an hour Broadway. And I thought, how the fuck can we do that? Anyway, we did the hour Broadway, and at the end, they were counting down the time. I had Andy pinned 1, 2, and the bell rang before 3. So then I did the old chant, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, and got the crowd going. We had the crowd with us the whole way. And we did another 5 minutes, and exactly the same. Then I had him 1, 2, bell rang. I said, another 5. Then we stopped. So we ended up dragging out like an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes. And Rackman gave us double pay that game, which was good.
Oh, man, well deserved. But how exhausted were you after that? Like an hour and 15 minutes.
I had to lay on the floor for about 15, 20 minutes before I can take my boots off. I was absolutely stuffed.
Oh God,
But
yeah,
I
like you
did
would.
two. I think I did 2 other 1 hour matches. Then I did quite a few 45-minute matches as well.
Yeah, like you'd really have to pace yourself with those matches. I'd think, like, you know what I mean, like very, very make sure you pace yourself. Like you wouldn't want to be in there with someone who's too eager, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you do all your high spots, and then you have your rest holds, because that's when as soon as you get a rest hold, bang, you're deep breathing, so you're getting it in. But with the adrenaline from the crowd, you sort of, I don't know, you just seem to get that extra energy. Even when you get injured,
Yeah.
like I did some tag matches. There was one night we did Manly, and in the first 2 or 3 minutes, I ruptured my ankle. I come off the top rope. Wayne and I were doing some quick tags with the young guys, and I come off the top rope, and the board in the ring had jumped up, and I'd gone down on my ankle. We still went another 20 minutes. So and the adrenaline again just kicked in, and we just kept going. After the match, I couldn't get my boot off. My foot had swollen that badly. And I was on crutches then for about 4 or 5 days. So, and that happened twice. So,
They have to cut the
things you
boot off.
do, and just keep going.
They have to cut the boot off your foot.
No, they ended up getting it off. And lucky it wasn't broken, or I've just torn all the tendons. So they strapped it up pretty heavy, and I was on crutches. And I'd go to work. I'm lucky I had a fantastic employer at the time. I just turned up on crutches and sat on a chair for 4 days.
That's a very understanding boss to be able to sit there and
Oh
go
yeah,
in.
that's why I always I worked in hardware, timber and hardware companies, and I always worked for small family businesses, and they were sensational. They gave me time off if I had to go. Like sometimes on a Wednesday night, Roy Heffernan would have a show at Newcastle, so I'd say, "Look, can I leave 2 hours early?" And they'd be no problem at all. So I'd knock off at say 2:30, 3 o'clock, drive up to Newcastle, wrestle, come back the next day, and I'd just make up the hours during the week somewhere. So I was really lucky. Yeah, yeah.
Like was
Even when
wrestling.
I had in '85 when that world class started in Melbourne, I had to be based in Melbourne. They offered me 6 weeks work, and the money was just sensational. It was more than double my weekly wages.
Wow.
And I thought, what am I going to do? And so I ended up quitting my job, quit my unit in Sydney, and I moved to Melbourne. And lucky enough, I moved in with mum and dad, so I had a lot of family time with them.
Yeah.
And the 6 weeks was the first 5 weeks was sensational. And we were wrestling 6 or 7 nights a week, flying around all around Australia, the nicest hotels, hire cars, everything you wanted. They had a full-time masseur on the road. But then I saw the writing on the wall, so I jumped ship before it sunk. And but I rang my boss up. I said, "Look, I'm coming back to Sydney next week." I said, "Can you let some of the reps know that I'm available?" He said, "I'll just start Monday." So I walked straight back into my job. I moved in with a friend of mine for about 3 weeks, got myself another unit, and back. It's just I hadn't left. It was just back to normal.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. But
Yeah.
like, did you like? Do you feel like around in the 80s, like there seemed to be a lot of shows going on there? Is it possible were guys, making a full-time living wrestling in that time?
No, nearly all the guys still had full-time jobs.
Yeah, right. So there
I
was
think,
wrestling a lot. There just wasn't a lot of money involved in it.
yeah, I mean, in those days, we were probably getting, maybe $80 a match.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay because sometimes you might get 10 or 20 shows a month, but then you might have a month where there's only 4 shows. And then if you're
Yeah.
injured, you don't get work at all. So you don't
It's
work.
just not consistent. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. So, and there was never many shows in December. Like they used to always, like Ingleburn and a few other clubs, they might finish up the first week of December, but then they wouldn't start up till February. So yeah, you'd have just most of December and January where you weren't getting work. So if you're relying on money,
yeah.
it just wasn't there. So yeah, it got better. The money got better, obviously, later in the 90s, of course. but you couldn't make a living out of it.
And, talking about, part of your career, Lofty Pickford, who you tagged with, Wayne Pickford, who was known as well, you guys were tag team champions. You guys wrestled, all over the place. How did the team with you and Lofty get started?
Well, again, because we were both the newest guys around at the time. Like I moved to Sydney in 1980. I'd come up in 79 for Steve Rackman for a trial show. I had to pay my own airfare up to Sydney, and I wrestled for nothing, just to get my face just to be seen. And luckily enough, he loved what he saw, and he said, move to Sydney, I can give you as much work as I can. And Melbourne was only probably doing maybe 2 shows a month, 3 shows at the most. And so I thought about it for about 4 or 5 months. Then at the end of the year, I quit my job and I said, I'm moving to Sydney. And everyone thought I'd last probably 6 weeks, and I'm still here. But I met Wayne training at Davies Gym with Roy Heffernan in the early 80s. And again, because we were the 2 newest guys who for quite a while, we just gelled, and we both had that desire and that passion, and we really wanted to learn as much as we could. And you couldn't get a better teacher than Roy Heffernan. And then later that year, Roy put us together as a tag team. And I mean, I wrestled Wayne probably about 50 times in the first 2 years against each other. We always had really good babyface matches, all high-flying stuff, all Roy Heffernan's routines, which was sensational. Then we started teaming up, and we teamed up from 81 pretty much to 95.
Wow, that's a big run.
Yeah, I mean, we had breakups at the time, and like I turned face. Wayne never turned face, but I turned face probably 3 or 4 times, depending on what the promotion needed at the time as well. If we were short of guys or whatever happened at the different times. And then when I turned face, I'd wrestle Wayne, of course, quite a few times. And then I'd turn back to being a heel, so we'd be a team again. So it was great.
That's great. Did you guys ever get the chance to go over to the States and and do a tour over there?
No, we were devastated. We had a deal with Stu Hart at one stage, and we were going to go over there for 3 months. And again, Roy Heffernan helped us get the deal. And I'd spoken to Stu Hart on the phone a few times. And we had everything set up. We had all our airfares paid. We had all that sort of stuff done. And about 3 weeks beforehand, Stu Hart rang me and said he'd sold the business to Vince McMahon. They're closing down.
Fuck.
And I was absolutely devastated. And because he called me about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just started bawling. And then I waited until 7 o'clock in the morning before I rang Wayne and told Wayne that he started bawling. So we both bawling on the phone to each other. And of course, I didn't know at the time, 12 months later, there was some problem with the deal, and the Hearts got the business back.
Yeah.
But again, because there's no internet in those days, there was nothing, you just didn't know about it. So I never bothered chasing it up again. But we did wrestle in England in 92.
And how was that tour?
Oh, fantastic. It was bloody hard, though, very hard. Again, 7 nights a week, sometimes 2 shows a day, because we did the holiday season, the summer season over there. They do all the holiday camp areas. And the very first night, we arrived on the Saturday morning. We stayed at Wayne's Artie's house on the Saturday night. Then the Sunday, we had to get a train to Blackpool. I think it was about 5 hours on the train. And as you can imagine, we were jet lagged. We were really stuffed from all the, travelling. We arrived at the arena and we didn't know anybody, of course. And they made us work twice. They made us both work a single, then a tag the same afternoon. And
you think it was a test? You think that was testing you out a bit?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And they put me in this guy, I think he was called the Indian Prince. And one of the other guys who ended up being a really nice guy and one of the nicest guys there, took me aside and said, "Oh, you got to watch this guy. He's pretty hard and pretty stiff." I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
good." That's how I work. And I wanted to make a good impression, so I just attacked him at the beginning, and I just laid in the chop straight away. And he was cowering in the corner, and the referee actually told me to loosen up and light him up, let him go. Well, what?
Yeah.
So it was difficult because, again, in England, they worked a different side of the body.
Yeah.
To us. They worked the right side, where in Australia and America, it's all the left side. They worked the right side, and they were still doing rounds like boxing in those days, in the 90s. And I found that really hard because you try and get the momentum going, and then boom, the bell would ring and you have a 30-second breather. And I thought, stupid,
I never understood how those English rules could work. Because how could you tell a story, like say a 30-minute match? How could you tell a story with every 2 minutes, like ding, ding,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Pain in the ass. I hated it. And when we were based in Leeds, and every day, because they offered us a car, and thank God I said no, because the driving was just frigging disgusting. Every day would be 6 hours in a bus because they had a minibus. So they'd have a meet at a certain spot. All the guys would park the spot there, the minibus. So they had a guy, Scott, which was Big Daddy's nephew, who was a lovely, lovely guy. He'd pick us up every morning at 7 o'clock. We'd drive to the spot, then we'd drive in the minibus. Then we wouldn't get home till 1 or 2 in the morning. Then he'd be there at 7 the next morning, picks up again. And we'd be driving like fucking forever. And there was one night we wrestled in Scotland, the top end of Scotland. We got picked up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We didn't get there till like 6 o'clock. So it's a 12-hour drive. We did the show. Then we got back I think we got back at 5 in the morning. And we were getting picked up at 7 for the next day. So we had an hour's sleep. And then we had breakfast because the lady was giving us breakfast every morning. It was our main meal of the day because we'd never had lunch because we were on the road.
Yeah.
And the next day was another 8-hour trip. I said, why don't you stay in frigging hotels? We went past this place yesterday. But that's how that just didn't work that way over there. And so, 8 hours the next day, then back. And in the bus, sometimes like you're cramped up in the bus, and it was just a real nightmare. And some of the guys you had to work with, like I was really shocked the inexperienced guys they were using. And they were so loose, and they didn't understand a lot. And we wrestled in one spot, and they had this young guy there, and he was from the local area, and apparently he was on like local TV commercials and all that sort of stuff. And they asked me if I'd make him look good and put him over. I said, not a problem at all. We had to do, I think it was only 5 3-minute rounds, I think it was. Yeah. I told him to start. I wanted to give him a real exposure start. Bang, 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 bang. He didn't have a clue what I was talking about. And I thought, you're fucking joking. And I was putting myself into holds to try and make him look good, and he just had no idea. So after the first round, I said to the referee, I said, this is fucking useless. It's horrible. And so in the second round, I just beat the shit out of him. And in the third round, I just beat him. And because I got in trouble from the promoters, but he had no idea. And I was thinking, how the hell are they giving these guys work and giving them a push? That happened to me twice. But then when I wrestled Danny Boy Collins, different story altogether. And the weird thing is he didn't actually travel with us to the show on the bus. And him and I were doing the main event. And it was 10 minutes before the match. I still hadn't met him. And I'm thinking, what the hell? And then he just strutted into the dressing room because he was a little bit arrogant, but I loved him for it in the end. He just said, oh, which one of you was? He said, Dunlop. And so I introduced myself to him. He said, give me one spot. So I gave him a spot. He said, I'll give you my spot. And we had the finish planned. And we had to do 8 5-minute rounds, so 40 minutes. And I said to him, Danny, can we cut the rounds out and just do 40 minutes straight? He said, can you go that long? I said, mate, not a problem. He said, yeah, we'll do that. He said, oh, one warning. He said, I work stiff. I said, good, so do I. And it was the best match of my career. It was
Really?
just sensational. We just
Did you
gelled like Fred and Ginger dancing. It was just sensational.
did you get a chance to work Ricky Knight when you were over there? Because he would have been like making the rounds that time, wouldn't he?
I never heard that name, no.
Ricky Knight, yeah, like he's
Yeah.
you know Paige's dad from WWE.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, no, didn't hear that name, no. But on the nights we didn't work for Dale Martin, we worked for Warwick Williams, who was, I think, the British Wrestling Federation. He had a few shows as well. His shows were very Americanised. They were different totally to Dale Martin's. And he had a lot of the big guys. And I actually enjoyed working for him more because, again, it suited our style. And, yeah, we did quite a few shows with them and did again, we had to do a single, then we had to do tags on the same nights as well. So you really earned your money. You worked your ass off. And we worked in some weird places. We worked in a circus. And there was the straw on the floor with all the bloody shit everywhere. It stunk. All the animals were in the back cages. It was absolutely just disgusting. It reeked. And then we wrestled in a mental hospital.
Really?
Yeah, that was a weird night. No security.
Crowd.
Yeah, they had there was no dressing room, so we had to be in the manager's office. So it's a tiny office, and here's all us, like some of the big, like Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, two huge men. We're all in this one little room. No showers, no toilet. We had to go outside to use the public toilet. All we had was a tap to wipe ourselves down with, and all the guy for the hospital said, don't let them bite you. so
Shit.
you had to work pretty much in the middle of the ring because they were trying to grab you all the time.
Yeah.
And there was one guy in the front row having a wank, watching. There was another couple having sex at the back. So the guy, I can't remember who I worked with now, but we had to sort of pretty much work in the whole, and there was that night we didn't do rounds. We just did like 15, 20 minutes. We had to wrestle in the middle of the ring because you couldn't go near the ropes because they'd just grab you. And it's funny, when Lofty wrestled, he had the guy in the figure 4 leg lock, and this guy had like an air horn. He stuck it in the right next to Lofty's ear, and and I've never seen Lofty move so quick in my life.
Remembering what he was like when I met him in the early 2000s, I'm surprised he didn't slam it over the guy's head. Understanding where he was at as well. But man, who would actually book a wrestling show at a mental institution though? That's crazy.
Yeah. But I did a show here in Melbourne. We did Pentridge Jail. So that was pretty weird. And that's when I was 17 then. So it was pretty scary.
How intimidating would that be for a 17-year-old kid? Just be like, yeah, I'm just going to go do a wrestling match in jail.
Oh, I was petrified. And when we went in, like you go through all your security and all the bullshit, they gave each wrestler a prisoner looked after us. They took us, there was one big room, like a mess room we were in, and we all had our own tables and chairs, and the prisoner sat there and made us a coffee, and we just chatted away, which was, again, very intimidating. And we were told not to ask them what they were in for. And of course, me being 17, I was curious. And the young guy was only about 24. And we had to have a cup of coffee together and chat away. And I just said, what are you in for? He said, double murder. And I shit myself. I was, oh, fuck.
That's why you don't
ask. Yeah, don't ask. And it was just, yeah, it's just really weird. And the scary part is for me, again, and at the time as well, I walked into the ring for my match and I was getting wolf whistles from some of the guys because I was young and my lily white skin. And
Sure.
that was, I thought, what the hell? So we had our match. I wrestled the Maltese Falcon for that one. And when we got back into the room, like the Maltese Falcon had a shower and he said, don't go in the showers. And I went, why? He said, there were 3 guys standing there playing with themselves, watching him have a shower. And so I didn't have a shower. I just put my tracksuit over me wrestling gear and I was petrified. I just couldn't wait to get out of there. But yeah, it was just some of the weird places. We did Puckapunyal Army Camp as well, which was a weird place. All these tough soldiers who are all bigger than all of us, basically, and fit as hell. And yeah, it's just some weird sort of shows. You think, oh, why would they book shows at these sort of places? But who cares? You make money from them.
Oh, 100%. As long as you're making money, you're getting a payday,
Yeah.
and you're getting an opportunity to wrestle. But look, it is getting to that 1 hour mark. It is time for 60 seconds with Piers. We're not going to let Ken get away without playing the game. Ken, how this game works is I'm going to ask you a bunch of random questions, and you've got 60 seconds to answer as many as you possibly can within that 60 seconds. So, Ken, we're about to get started. You let me know when you're ready, and I'll start the clock.
I'm ready.
Okay, one has to go. Game of Thrones, Lord of Rings, or Harry Potter?
Game of Thrones.
Would you rather appear on Home and Away or Neighbours?
Home and Away.
What is your go-to drink on a night out?
Lemon lime bitters.
Home barbecues or nightclubs?
Home barbecues.
If you were given $2 million to spend in 24 hours, how do you spend it?
I'd set up all my family.
If you never were able to wrestle, what kind of career would you have gone into?
Roller derby.
If you could make any change, regardless of how big or small it is to wrestling, what would it be?
So what? Can you repeat that?
If you could make any change, regardless of how big or small it is to wrestling, what would it be?
I'd love to see 6 promoters get together and work their ass off together to make it better for everybody and better pay for all the guys.
What is the last book you read?
Unfortunately, my own. Dazzler Dunlop, inside my squared circle.
Snapchat or TikTok?
Neither.
There you go. And last one, in 5 minutes' time, you're being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
Ooh. My photo collection.
Yeah.
Ooh. Photo collection and music. I love music, Australian music. So a few records or CDs.
Absolutely. But, that has been 60 seconds with Piers. Ken, thank you so much for coming on Shooting the Shit Uncensored. This has been, it's been an amazing conversation this hour. You've had a really good conversation with someone where you just look at the time and go, where did that hour just go?
Yeah.
Ken, I'm kind of going to put you on the spot and I'm going to ask you to come back. I'd love to do a part 2, and I feel like an hour with a man who had such a stellar, amazing career, I think isn't enough to talk about your story. And I'd love to have you back for a part 2 somewhere down the line in the next week or 2 if you're available.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
But Ken, can you tell our audience where they can find you on social media, where they can get a copy of your book, Dazzler Dunlop, and also where they can support you on social media?
I only do Facebook. I'm 61 years old, so I'm not very good on the old computer, so only on Facebook. But you can get my book through Shoreline Publishing Group. but it is available like Amazon, Booktopia, all those sort of places as well. Again, I'm not a big social media person. I don't do any of those sort of TikToks and all that sort of stuff. So just Facebook.
There you go. We'll also have the link in the YouTube video description and also in the podcast platform description where you can get a copy of Dazzler Dunlop's autobiography. Guys, take it from someone who is in the middle of reading it, and I really want to complete it by the time I bring you on next time, Ken. And as I said, I doubt I'll be. It'll take me very long to finish it. I've enjoyed it. And it's one of those books. I'm actually going to get my wife to read it next because I think it's that good of a book that she would appreciate as well, even though she's not a wrestling fan. But guys, make sure you go and check out Ken's book. I can't put it over enough, guys. It is an amazing read. Guys, also huge shout out to our sponsors, healthaid.com and sleeps.com. Use promo code MWAPod to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Guys, also MWA Podcast Network. We are the premium place in the world for you to get your pro wrestling multimedia content. We've got Nights of the Gimmick Table hosted by the Dead Presidents, Boogaloo and Lowrider, who are independent tag team wrestling legends. They've traveled all over the United States and two of the most respected guys on the indies today and in the last 20 years. And also joining that show is Cade Lothbrock. He is a guy who is a deathmatch professional wrestler. He's a professional wrestler, and he is a guy who has transformed his body from being a 300 and something pound guy to being a 200 and something pound guy, and has been amazing. And he is joining Nights of the Gimmick Table. So make sure you check that show out. It is going to be available every single Wednesday night at 9 p.m. USA Eastern Time, which is Thursday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. So make sure you check it out. And also check out Killing the Business, hosted by ECW original, the Kingpin, Angel Medina, King Mega as well. And these guys break down every single thing that's happening in wrestling for the week. These guys are hilarious. They keep it 100. They don't pull any punches. It's two 30-year wrestling veterans who just go at it and break it down for you guys. Also, make sure you check out Wrestling with Tragedy over on the Vince Russo Network with myself, John Poz, and ECW original, the Kingpin, Angel Medina as well. Two episodes available every single week, one on YouTube and one on patreon.com/RussoTWC. But guys, I'm not going to take up any more of everybody's time. Thank you very much, Ken, for being on the show. We greatly appreciate it. Everybody who tuned in live, thank you so much for tuning in. Everyone who checked it out afterwards, thank you. I love you. Good night, and we will see you again very, very soon.
Thank you.
Ah.